The sky over Seoul was a pale gray, the color of old concrete. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon. Near the Yongsan district, the Kilios Concord garrison rose from the city like a shard of polished black glass. It was smooth and silent, a building that did not belong. Around its high, energy-fenced gates, a small crowd of humans had gathered as they often did. They came to watch the aliens. The Kilios were tall and thin, with long arms and gray skin that looked like stone. They moved with a stiff, precise grace. To the humans watching, they were strange and fascinating. To the Kilios, the humans were a noisy, disorganized mystery. They had been on Earth for 6 months now. They called it an oversight garrison. They said it was for cultural exchange and planetary security. Most people knew it was really to watch over a species the galaxy considered young and unpredictable. Among the crowd were 2 neighbors. Kim Yuna was a university student with a bright red backpack. She was 20 years old and her eyes were sharp and curious. Next to her, looking nervous, was Park Jun. He worked at a coffee shop called Morning Grounds. He was supposed to be at work soon, but he had stopped to stare. He always stopped to stare. "Look at that," Yuna said, pointing. Her voice was calm and clear. "The way the light bends around their transport. It's like a heat haze. Looks expensive," Jun muttered, checking his watch. "And breakable. Do you think they drink coffee? Real coffee, I mean, not some energy paste." Yuna smiled but didn't answer. Her attention was fixed on the mechanics of the scene. She was an archer. She saw angles, tension, and release. A large anti-gravity loader was floating a cargo crate through the main gate. The crate was the size of a small car. It was held by glowing blue energy bands. A single Kilios soldier guided it with a control pad. High above, in an apartment building that looked over the garrison wall, a man stood by a window. His name was Lee Hanul. He was a history teacher at a local high school. He was not watching the aliens. He was watching the people watching the aliens. His face was still, like a calm lake. But his eyes, dark and heavy, moved with a slow, professional care. He saw Yuna and Jun. He saw the other faces. He saw the patterns in the crowd. Hanul's apartment was simple. A few books, a small kitchen, a neat bed. The only unusual thing was a tall, narrow case in the corner. It was locked. On a shelf was a framed photo of a younger Hanul in a military uniform, standing next to another soldier, both smiling. That was 10 years ago. Down below, something went wrong. A sharp, high-pitched sound came from the Kilios loader. A vibration. The floating cargo crate shuddered. The blue energy bands flickered. The Kilios operator tapped his control pad quickly, his long fingers stabbing at the lights. The crate dipped suddenly. The crowd gasped and took a step back. The energy bands did not fail all at once. That would have sent the crate straight down. The first band snapped with a sound like a cracking whip. The crate tilted violently to the left. It swung toward the security fence. The Kilios guard shouted a warning in his own clicking language. The second band flickered and died. Now the crate was spinning, a massive weight moving sideways, directly toward the section of the crowd where Yuna and Jun stood. People screamed and tried to run. It was too tight, too crowded. Yuna's eyes went wide. She did not scream. She dropped her backpack and pushed Jun hard to the side. She calculated the crate's arc, the speed, the space. There was nowhere for her to go. Jun stumbled and fell. He looked up, frozen. In his apartment, Hanul's body became very still. The calm lake of his face did not change, but his hands, resting on the windowsill, tightened. His breathing slowed until it almost stopped. His eyes were no longer on the people. They were on the crate, on the 2 remaining glowing energy bands holding it. They were straining, ready to break. The third band snapped. The crate's spin became a deadly, sweeping curve. It was 5 meters from the crowd. 3 meters. Yuna braced. Then the fourth and final band did not simply break. It burst. Not at its main connection point, but halfway down its length. It was not a failure of power. It was a cut. The crate's movement changed instantly. The violent swing lost its force. Instead of plowing into the crowd, the massive weight twisted in the air. It lost momentum and direction. It slammed, with a deafening crash of metal and splintering composite material, into a reinforced concrete security barrier just 2 meters to the left of the crowd. The barrier, designed for such impacts, cracked but held. Dust and debris billowed out. Silence fell, thick and sudden. Then came the sounds. Human cries, the hum of alien alarms, the hiss of the broken loader. Yuna stood, covered in dust, perfectly unharmed. June scrambled to his feet beside her, his heart pounding in his ears. They looked at the wreckage, then at each other. They had been in the path. Now they were not. On the garrison wall, a security camera recorded everything. Its high-resolution lens captured the final moments in perfect detail. It captured the precise point on the 4th energy band where it failed. Commander Vale stood in the sterile, quiet security center of the garrison. He replayed the footage. Again and again. He watched the first 3 bands fail from stress. He watched the 4th. He zoomed in. At the exact moment of failure, a small, dark object entered the frame from the upper left. It moved faster than the eye could follow. It struck the energy band not at its thickest point, but at a specific, vulnerable junction. The object was not an energy weapon. It was solid. It was small. And it was impossibly accurate. Vale turned to his subordinate. The object. Find it. 10 minutes later, a Kelios soldier presented an item on a tray. It was a simple, heavy ceramic bearing, the kind used in an industrial-sized ball joint. It was scorched and cracked from impacting the energy field. Vale picked it up. It was cool. This was no accident. This was a shot. A shot that altered physics to save lives. A shot only an expert could make. He looked from the bearing in his hand to the frozen video screen, showing the terrified human faces. Then he looked beyond the wall, to the thousands of windows of the human apartments. Someone out there, he said, his voice a low hum, intervened. Professional. Find out which human military unit was on alert. I want to know who their sniper is. The silence in Commander Vale's office was a heavy thing. It was not peaceful. It was the silence of a machine waiting for data. The wall was a screen, frozen on the final frame from the incident. The shattered cargo crate, the dust, the unharmed crowd. A small circle glowed around the point of impact on the energy band. Vale sat perfectly still. His long gray fingers were pressed together. He had watched the recording 117 times. He had analyzed the angle of the shot, the speed of the projectile, the wind conditions from that day's weather data. The math was clear and cold. The shot was not luck. It was a calculated act of extreme skill. It required a deep understanding of physics, of materials, of ballistics. It was military. A soft tone sounded. His human liaison, a man named Mr. Park from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, was announced. Mr. Park entered with a polite smile. He was a man who smoothed things over. Commander Vale, Mr. Park said with a slight bow. A troubling incident, but thankfully no one was hurt. Our emergency services report only minor dust inhalation. A full inquiry into the loader's malfunction is, of course, our joint priority. Vale did not return the smile. He gestured to the screen. There was no malfunction with the 4th tether. Mr. Park's smile faded.
I'm sorry.
It was severed, Vale said. The word was sharp. By a projectile. A solid round of dense ceramic. It struck a 0.3 millimeters wide on a vibrating energy field from a distance we estimate to be between 400 and 600 meters. It changed the crate's trajectory by 18.7 degrees. This saved 23 human lives. Mr. Park stared at the screen. He saw the circle. He understood. I see. That is remarkable. It is a tactical intervention of the highest order, Vale corrected. It shows restraint, precision, and superior field calculation. Your soldier did well. I wish to speak with them. My soldier. Mr. Park looked genuinely confused. Commander, no Korean military units were activated. No special forces were in the area. Our agreement forbids armed patrols within 5 kilometers of your garrison. Vale studied the human's face. He saw no deception, only bewilderment. This made no sense. A weapon like this is not a toy. It is not a civilian tool. It is an instrument of war. Only a trained military sniper could have made this shot. Who is he or she? I wish to commend their discipline. They used minimal force to prevent a tragedy. This is an act I understand. Mr. Park spread his hands. Commander, with all respect, you are asking me to find a person who, according to you, does not exist. Our police found no weapon, no reports of gunfire, just a broken machine and a lot of dust. This was unacceptable. Vale dismissed Mr. Park. He would use his own methods. He ordered a deep scan of all human records in the surrounding buildings. He looked for anyone with a history of weapons use. The search was broad and fast. Most names meant nothing. But one file appeared, marked by a faded flag from a decade past. Lee Hanul, former ROK Army, 707th Special Mission Group, sniper, honorable discharge 10 years ago after a classified incident. Current profession, high school history teacher. Residence, apartment 12B, Sondo Building, with a direct line of sight to the Garrison Gate. A teacher. Vale's mind could not connect the two ideas. A killer of men now teaching children about the past? It was illogical, but it was a thread, the only thread. The next day, Vale went to the school. He did not wear his formal uniform. He wore a simple gray tunic. He still looked alien, a stone figure walking through the bright, noisy hallways. Students stopped and whispered. He found the classroom. Lee Hanul was at the front. He was not a large man, but he had a stillness that made the space around him seem quiet. He was cleaning an old rifle. The students, a group of 16-year-olds, watched with interest. Vale stood in the doorway. The rifle was a bolt-action model from the mid-20th century. It was clearly deactivated, a relic. Hanul ran a soft cloth along the wooden stock with a kind of gentle care. He looked up and saw Vale. His eyes, dark and flat, showed no surprise. He gave a small, barely noticeable nod to his students. They quietly gathered their things and filed out, glancing at the alien commander. The room was now silent. Vale entered. Lee Hanul. Yes. Hanul did not stand up. He continued polishing the old metal of the rifle's receiver. I am Commander Vale of the Kilios Concord Garrison. You were a sniper. I was a soldier. Now I am a teacher. This, Hanul said, tapping the old rifle, is for a lesson on the Korean War, technology versus terrain. Vale ignored the history lesson. He placed a small data disk on the desk. It projected the now familiar scene above the surface. The swinging crate, the frozen moment of impact. 3 days ago, at the Garrison Gate. You saw this. Hanul glanced at the image. His face showed nothing. I saw an accident. I was glad no one was hurt. It was not an accident, Vale stated, his voice hardening. It was prevented by a shot of impossible precision. Your file says you are capable of such a shot. My file is 10 years old, Hanul said. He finally put the cloth down and looked directly at Vale. I teach history now. The past is full of shots that were taken. I am more interested in the ones that were not. Vale felt a flicker of frustration. Humans were so indirect. A weapon was fired from a building near yours. It saved lives. This was a good act. I am not here to punish. I am here to understand. Who is your sniper? Which of your current military professionals did this? A faint, cold smile touched Hanul's lips. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who knew a secret that was also a truth. He leaned back in his chair. You are looking for the wrong thing, Commander, Hanul said, his voice low and even. You look for a title, a uniform, a license to kill. He gestured toward the window, toward the sprawling city. You will not find it. Explain, Vale demanded. Hanul stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the city, the same city he watched from his apartment. You asked me a question. Who is your sniper? He turned to face the alien commander. The The cold smirk was back, solid and sure. Any civilian will do, Lee Hanul said. They don't miss. He picked up the ancient, harmless rifle and placed it back in its display case. The click of the lock was the only sound in the room. Commander Vale stared at him, the illogical words hanging in the air. Any civilian? It was a ridiculous, impossible statement. But the man who said it believed it completely. And for the first time, Vale felt a small, cold doubt. Commander Vale walked back to the garrison. The human teacher's words played in his mind. Any civilian will do. They don't miss. It was an insult to logic. A sniper was a specialized tool honed by years of training. A civilian was an untrained, random unit. The two could not be the same. He entered the quiet, cool analysis room of the garrison. His officers waited. They had seen his frustration. The human, Lee Hanul, is hiding something, Vale said. He has the skill, but he denies the act. He speaks in riddles. We will find the truth another way. I want to understand these civilians. He gave new orders. The surveillance on Lee Hanul would continue. But the wider mission was now different. They were to observe the human population around the garrison. Not for threats, but for patterns. For skills. Look for precision, Vale commanded. Any activity that requires a steady hand and a sharp eye. Anything that looks like training. The Kelios scanning systems were advanced. They could listen to public conversations, access open human networks, and observe from high above. The data began to flow in. First, it was a flood of noise. Millions of people doing millions of things. Then, the filter started to find matches. One report focused on Kim Yuna, the student from the incident at the gate. She was at a large indoor sports complex. She was not running or jumping. She was standing perfectly still. In her hands was a modern compound bow. She wore a fingertab and a guard on her arm. On her face was a look of total focus. The report noted, subject engages in repetitive precision activity. Distance to target, 70 meters. Vale watched the video feed. Yuna drew the bowstring back to her cheek. She held it. There was no shake. No tremble. She stared at the small colored circle far down the lane. She released. The arrow flew with a soft thrum. It struck the center of the gold ring. Perfect shot. She did not celebrate. She simply reached for another arrow. She did this again and again. It was practice. It was discipline. It was, in its way, a martial skill. Another report highlighted Park Jun, the barista. After his coffee shop closed, he went home to a small apartment. He put on a virtual reality headset. He was playing a game called Star Marshal. The game was popular. It was a space combat simulator. The report noted, asterisk subject's player profile is in the top 0.1% percentile for accuracy. Preferred weapon, long-range tactical rifle. Average engagement distance in simulation, 800 meters. Asterisk Vale watched a recording of Jun's game session. On the screen, Jun's character was hiding in the wreck of a spaceship. An enemy target moved quickly between distant platforms. Jun's character aimed, leading the target, calculating drop. He fired once. The target fell. Jun took a sip of soda. He looked bored. This was a game to him, a way to relax. But his hands were calm on the controls. His eyes tracked movement with an effortless ease. A third report was more surprising. It was about an older woman named Choi Sumin. She ran a small food delivery service called Grandma's Noodles. The report was not about cooking. It was about an old photograph found on a public sporting database. The photo was 50 years old. It showed a young, sharp-eyed Choi Sumin on a podium. She was holding a medal. The caption read, National Sport Pistol Shooting Champion Gold. Vale zoomed in on the photo. The woman in the picture stood straight. Her hands, holding the pistol, were steady as stone. He cross-referenced it with current traffic camera footage. He saw Choi Sumin now. She was in her 60s. She drove a small electric delivery scooter through heavy Seoul traffic. She weaved between cars with quiet confidence. Her movements were quick and efficient. She never hesitated. The reports kept coming. A man in a park throwing small wooden arrows into a narrow pot from 10 steps away. A game called Tuho. A group of teenagers in a basement playing a board game called Jangi, moving pieces with slow, strategic patience. A hobbyist in a workshop building miniature ships inside glass bottles, using long, delicate tools. Vale sat in the dark analysis room. The screens showed it all. The archer, the gamer, the retired champion, the game players, the hobbyists. It was not a military. There were no uniforms. There was no single purpose. But the pattern was undeniable. Precision. It was everywhere. A junior officer spoke. Commander, our initial assessment was incorrect. The human capacity for targeted kinetic action is not limited to a military class. It appears to be a cultural hobby. Vale did not answer. He was thinking about the ceramic bearing. It was not a standard bullet. It was something you might find in a factory or a workshop. It was a tool repurposed. Lee Hanul's words were no longer just a riddle. They were a statement of fact. He was not pointing to one person. He was pointing to a city, to a culture. The teacher was not the sniper. He was a signpost. He was saying, look around you. You are asking the wrong question. The threat was not a soldier hiding among civilians. The threat was that the line between the two was blurred. Or maybe, for humans, it did not exist at all. A civilian with a bow could hit a target from 70 meters. A civilian with a game controller could calculate a shot at 800 meters. A civilian grandmother once put small holes in paper targets from 25 meters with a pistol, and now she navigated chaotic traffic to deliver lunch. Where did the hobby end and the skill begin? Where did the civilian end and the soldier start? For the Kelios, these were separate boxes. For humans, it seemed the walls between these boxes were very, very thin. Vale finally turned to his officers. His voice was quiet. Update the profile on humanity. They do not have a specialized military sniper corps. They have something else. They have a society that practices the art of the perfect shot. For fun. The report was finished. Commander Vale read it on his screen. The title was Preliminary Analysis of Human-Civilian Precision-Based Subcultures. It was full of data about archery ranges, gaming rankings, and old sports records. It was a good report. It explained what they had seen. But it did not feel like an answer. It felt like a description of a strange, shallow pond. Vale felt there were deep, dark waters underneath. He needed to test his theory. He needed to prove to himself and to the Kelios High Command that this was not a threat, that these civilian skills were just games. They were not real. A simulated shot was not a real shot. A target arrow was not a weapon. He needed to show the difference. He sent a formal message to the human authorities. It spoke of friendship and mutual understanding. It proposed a goodwill demonstration of technological harmony. The Kelios garrison would showcase one of their advanced surveillance drones in a public space. It would be a display of grace, speed, and precision. The humans were invited to watch. The subtext was clear. Let us show you what true military precision looks like. The location was set for Gwangwaman Square. It was a wide, open space surrounded by old palaces and modern glass buildings. A stage was built. Chairs were set up for officials. The news channels were excited. It was a spectacle. On the morning of the demonstration, the square was full of people. They held up phones to record. Kim Yuna and Park Jun were there. They stood near the back of the crowd, curious. Yuna had her small backpack. Jun was checking his phone, nervous about being late for his afternoon shift. High above, in a quiet coffee shop with a large window overlooking the square, Lee Hanul sat alone. He had a cup of black tea. He was not watching the preparations below. He was looking at the buildings around the square. He looked at rooftops, at open windows, at balconies. He was not scanning for threats. He was noting features like a man reading a familiar map. Commander Vale stood on the stage. He spoke into a microphone. His voice was translated into Korean. People of Seoul, today we share a piece of Kelios technology. It represents peace. It represents watchful care. It was a standard speech. He did not believe all of it. He believed in order. This drone was order, a perfect machine following perfect instructions. The drone was released. It was not like a human drone. It was shaped like a dark, smooth teardrop. It made no sound. It lifted from the stage and hung in the air. Then it began to move. It darted forward, stopped instantly, zipped to the side, and spun in complex patterns. It was incredibly fast. Its movements were not random. They were based on advanced evasion algorithms. It was showing off. It was saying, "You cannot hit me." The crowd made sounds of appreciation. They were impressed. In the coffee shop, Hanul took a slow sip of his tea. He picked up his phone. He did not make a call. He sent a single text message. It went to a number that was not saved in his contacts. The message contained only one word: now. He put the phone down and finally looked at the drone dancing in the sky. Down in the crowd, Park Jun watched the drone's movement. His gamer's mind, trained on patterns, started to work without him telling it to. "Look at that flutter," he muttered to Yuna, not looking away. "Right before it changes direction. It's tiny. The algorithm has a tell. It always dips 3 centimeters to the right first." Yuna nodded, her eyes narrow. She was not looking at the beauty of the flight. She was looking at the physics. It's fast, but its balance is off. Can you see? It's heavier on the left side. When it spins hard, it drifts. Just a little. They were not planning anything. They were just observing. It was what they did. A gamer analyzed mechanics. An archer analyzed balance and flight. On a rooftop 2 blocks away, a different activity was underway. It was a rooftop archery cafe called Flight Path. It was a legal business. People paid to drink coffee and shoot arrows at soft targets. A young man named Teho was there. He was practicing. He drew his bow, aiming at a target 30 meters away. His phone, sitting on the ledge, buzzed. He saw a notification from a group chat. It was a link to the live news stream of the drone show with a message from a friend. "Check out this alien tech. So cool." Teho looked. He saw the drone zipping around. It was fascinating. He went back to his shot. Just then, a sudden gust of wind, common between the tall buildings, caught his arrow as he released. It was a mistake. The arrow flew off its intended path. It sailed in a high, foolish arc away from the safety netting, out over the square. The carbon fiber arrow, moving fast, tumbled through the air. It was not aimed. It was an accident. By pure, unlucky chance, its path crossed the drone's complex evasion pattern. The drone, dipping 3 centimeters to the right as it always did, moved directly into the arrow's falling path. The arrow did not strike the main body. It snagged in the fine, delicate wiring of the drone's rear stabilizer. There was a sharp crack of breaking carbon fiber. The arrow broke off, but a piece of it tangled in the machinery. The drone's perfect flight ended. It wobbled violently. A loud, grinding whine came from it. It began to spin in a lopsided, uncontrolled circle on the stage. Commander Vale's head snapped up. His eyes widened. An accident. A stupid, human accident. In the crowd, Yuna saw it. "It's left side weight," she said. "It's pulling it now. It's going into a spiral." The drone, blind and spinning, shot sideways across the square. It was headed toward the glass windows of an office building. From another building, a different sort of shot was fired. A recreational paintball team was playing a legal game on a rooftop course. A player named Jean, taking a shot at an opponent, missed. The bright orange paintball sailed over the safety barrier. It flew down toward the square. It was a 1 in a million shot. The paintball, moving fast, struck the spinning drone directly on its primary optical sensor lens. It splattered, covering it in thick, opaque orange paint. Now the drone was blind and crippled. Turned sharply, its programming trying to find a safe place to land. It shot downward, toward the crowd near the stage. People screamed and scattered. At that moment, a heavy-duty commercial delivery drone buzzed into the airspace. It was a large, 6-rotor machine carrying a thermal bag. It was operated by Grandma's Noodles. It was on a pre-programmed route to deliver an order of 6 hot bowls of jajangmyeon to an office on the square. This path was fixed and legal. It had right-of-way. The blind, falling Helios drone dropped directly into the delivery drone's path. The larger, slower, and much sturdier delivery drone did not alter course. Its programming was simple: follow the GPS route. It collided with the Helios drone with a loud crunch of composite plastic. The impact was not violent. It was a nudge, but it was enough. The Helios drone was shoved off its dangerous path. It veered away from the crowd and landed, with a final, pathetic crunch, directly into a large, soft safety net that had been set up for the show. It lay there, tangled, painted orange, and broken. For a moment, there was absolute silence in Gwangwaman Square. Then, the delivery drone, unharmed, continued on its way. It delivered the noodles to the office building, right on time. Commander Vale stood frozen on the stage. He looked at the wreck in the net. He looked at the pieces of arrow on the ground. He looked at the orange paint on the stage. He saw the cheerful Grandma's Noodles logo on the delivery drone as it flew away. At IT was a sequence of impossible events. An errant arrow, a stray paintball, a food delivery, all accidents, all legal, all perfectly timed. His eyes searched the crowd. He found the window of the coffee shop high above. He could not see the man inside, but he knew he was there. This was not an answer to his demonstration. This was a lesson, and it was a humiliation. The silence in the square broke into noise. People cheered, thinking the drone's crash was a surprising but planned end to the show. Officials looked confused. News reporters spoke quickly into their microphones, calling it a technical hiccup. Commander Vale stood like a stone statue. He did not hear the noise. He saw only the sequence of events, playing again and again in his mind. The arrow, the paintball, the delivery drone, 3 separate legal civilian actions, 1 ruined military machine. He left the stage without a word. His officers followed him, their gray faces tight with shame and confusion. The walk back to the garrison was short, but it felt long. Every human face he passed seemed to look at him differently now. Were they laughing? Were they just curious? He could not tell. An hour later, he was in his office. The broken drone lay on a table. It smelled of orange paint and burnt wiring. The report from his technical officer was clear. Total system failure. Cause: physical entanglement with a carbon fiber projectile, followed by sensor occlusion, followed by a low-velocity collision. No energy weapons. No cyber attack. Just bad luck, sir. Vale picked up a piece of the broken arrow. It was light and strong. Bad luck, he repeated, his voice flat. He put the arrow fragment down. And the paintball? And the delivery drone's flight path. All within local laws, the officer said. The archery cafe has permits. The paintball arena has permits. The delivery drone's route was filed with the city traffic AI. There are videos from the paintball game. The player who fired the shot was aiming at a target 30 meters to the west. He missed. It was an accident. 3 accidents, Vale said. One after the other, each one correcting the course of the last. Saving my drone from causing a tragedy. This is not luck. This is coordination. He turned to the window. The city was bright under the afternoon sun. He is here. Bring Lee Hanul to me. Not to the garrison. Somewhere neutral. They met on an old stone balcony that looked over the city. It was part of a public park. Below them, people walked, talked, and lived their lives. Hanul arrived alone. He wore simple clothes. He looked like a tired teacher, not a soldier. He leaned on the railing and looked out, waiting. Vale stood beside him, stiff and formal. What happened today was not an accident, Vale began, not looking at Hanul. I saw a drone show, Hanul said, his voice calm. It was interesting, until the equipment failed. A shame. Do not play this game with me. Vale's voice was sharp, a crack in his calm. The arrow, the paint, the food delivery. It was a message, a surgical humiliation. You coordinated this. Hanul finally turned his head. His dark eyes were serious. Coordinated? Commander, you saw civilians. A student with a bow. A man playing a game. A grandmother's lunch delivery. You asked for a demonstration of your precision. The city gave you a demonstration of its own. It was not a message. It was reality. Reality. Vale spat the word. Reality is that a multi-million credit military asset was destroyed by a series of hobbies. No, Hanul said, his voice dropping lower. Reality is that it was saved by those hobbies. Saved from crashing into a crowd. Your precision is in a machine. Our precision is in the people. You keep looking for one sniper. You will never find him. Because he is not a him. He is an US. Hanul pushed away from the railing and faced the alien. Let me tell you a story. A real one. Not a demonstration. Vale said nothing. He just listened. 10 years ago, Hanul began. I was in the mountains, near the border. I was a sniper. My spotter was my best friend. His name was Minsu. Hanul's voice was like dry leaves. We were on a reconnaissance mission. We were hidden. We were still. We had been still for 18 hours. Then, an enemy drone, much like yours but with missiles, was sent to hit a target. A bunker 1 kilometer from our position. It was a precision strike. The operator was 50 kilometers away, safe in a chair. He fired. Hanul's hands, resting on the stone, tightened slightly. The missile was smart. It was precise. But intelligence is not wisdom. It missed the bunker. By 15 meters. It landed on the rock face Minsu and I were using for cover. Hanul took a slow breath. The blast did not kill me. I was protected by an angle of stone. Minsu was not. He was killed by arrogance. The arrogance that believes a license, a uniform, and a high-tech weapon make you precise. That they make your shot matter more than anyone else's. He looked directly at Vale. We learned that precision is not what you own. It is what you do. It is the care you take. My neighbor, Yuna, cares about the flight of her arrow. My neighbor, June, cares about the pattern in a game. Choi Sumin cares that her noodles arrive hot. They practice their care every day. For fun. For sport. For life. Hanul gestured to the vast city below. The archery ranges, the game cafes, the workshops, the delivery routes. You are looking for a weapon. You are wrong. The weapon is the practice. The weapon is the patience. The weapon is the millions of steady hands that do not shake because they are not afraid, they are focused. You did not lose to a sniper today. You lost to a barista who understands timing. To a student who understands trajectories. To a grandmother who understands that the food must always be delivered on time. No matter what is in the way. The wind blew between them. Vale stared at the human. He thought of the reports. Kim Yuna's perfect archery form. Park Jun's top gaming rankings. Choi Sumin's gold medal from a lifetime ago. He thought of the ceramic bearing that hit an energy band. It was not fired from a military rifle. It could have been launched from a homemade device, built by a hobbyist in a garage. We don't have snipers, Commander, Hanul said, finishing his thought. We have a society, and that society doesn't miss. Hanul gave a small, final nod. He did not wait to be dismissed. He turned and walked away down the path, blending into the flow of other people. Another civilian. Commander Vale remained on the balcony. He looked at his own long, gray hands. They were trained for specific tasks. They had never held a bow for fun. They had never played a game for relaxation. They had only ever held tools of duty. For the first time, he felt he understood the terrifying truth. Humanity's defense was not a wall or an army. It was a million points of quiet, practiced skill, scattered like seeds in the soil of everyday life. You could not bomb it. You could not target it. Because the moment you threatened it, it would not be a soldier who stopped you. It would be a delivery. The report was the hardest thing Commander Vale had ever written. He sat in his office for a long time. The broken drone was gone. The only thing on his desk was a small, scorched ceramic bearing. He rolled it between his fingers. It was cool and smooth. A simple thing. Part of a machine. Used in a new way. He began to type. The title was simple, Reassessment of Human Threat Classification. The Civilian Precision Paradigm. He did not write about armies or fleets. He wrote about culture. He described the archery ranges not as sports facilities, but as widespread, decentralized training grounds. He described the gaming rankings as a vast, open-source network for developing tactical reflexes and understanding ballistic physics. He wrote about the old national shooting competitions and how those skills did not disappear, they just went quiet. He called it a dormant precision. He wrote about the incident at the gate, not as an attack but as a collective reflex, a society protecting itself without a single order being given. He wrote about the drone demonstration. He did not call it sabotage. He called it emergent neutralization, a series of legal civilian actions by chance or design combining to negate a military threat. The system of the city had corrected an error like an immune system. The conclusion was clear. Treating humanity as a standard, primitive species was a mistake. Their strength was not centralized. It was distributed. Every civilian was a potential sensor. Every hobby was a potential skill set. You could not defeat it by destroying a capital or a base. The base was everywhere. He finished the report and sent it to the Kelios High Command. Then he did something unusual. He left the garrison alone. He took off his formal jacket. He wore a plain gray shirt. He walked into the city without guards. He did not know where he was going. He just walked. He saw the city with new eyes. He saw a man in a park flying a drone with a camera. The man was not a pilot. He was a photographer, but his hands on the controls were steady. He saw a woman in a street market, playing a game where she had to toss rings onto bottles. She won a small prize. Her throw was smooth and accurate. He saw two old men playing a board game called Baduk in the shade of a tree. Their moves were slow, thoughtful, and full of deep strategy. They were planning 20 steps ahead. Everywhere there was a focus, a care for small, precise actions. His walk led him without planning to a small, old street. The buildings were low. He smelled something good, savory, and sweet. He saw a sign, Grandma's Noodles. The door was open. Inside, it was warm and steamy. A few people were eating at simple tables. Behind the counter was Choi Soo-min. She was older, her hair gray. She moved between the kitchen and the counter with a calm efficiency. She did not rush. Every movement had a purpose. Vale stood in the doorway. He felt strange. He was an alien commander in a simple noodle shop. Soo-min looked up. She saw his gray skin, his tall frame, his different face. Her eyes showed a flicker of surprise. Then it was gone. She gave a small, polite nod. "Hello. Can I help you?" Vale realized he had not planned this. He did not know what to say. I would like to eat," he said. His Korean was formal and correct. "To eat? Good. Sit anywhere," Soo-min said. She wiped her hands on a cloth. "We have jjajangmyeon. It is our only dish, but it is good." Vale sat at a small table by the window. He felt very large and out of place. A minute later, Soo-min brought him a large black bowl. It was full of thick, dark noodles with sauce. She placed it in front of him. Then she put down a pair of wooden chopsticks. "Thank you," Vale said. He looked at the chopsticks. They were simple. He had used tools before, but human utensils were different. He picked them up. He tried to hold them as he had seen in videos. His long fingers fumbled. The sticks crossed and wobbled. He could not pick up the slippery noodles. He tried again. The noodles slid away. He felt a wave of frustration. Here he was, a commander who understood quantum mechanics and stellar navigation, defeated by a simple meal. A shadow fell over the table. He looked up. Choi Soo-min was standing there. She had been watching. Her face was not mocking. It was calm, like a teacher's. "Like this," she said softly. She took another pair of chopsticks from her apron. She held them in one hand. Her fingers, wrinkled but strong, positioned the sticks perfectly. "You do not grip hard. You let them rest. Here and here." She showed him the positions. The bottom stick does not move. It is your anchor. The top stick moves. It is your action. You press with your finger, like a trigger.
Val liste ned.
He watched her hands. They were the hands from the photograph. The hands that had held a sport pistol and put shots through the center of a target over and over. Now they held chopsticks with the same exact, gentle control that he tried to copy her. His fingers were clumsy. "Again," she said, her voice patient. "The hold is everything. And the follow-through." He tried. This time, the sticks stayed straight. He pinched them. He managed to lift a small clump of noodles. They wavered, but they did not fall. He moved them carefully to his mouth. He ate. The flavor was rich and new. Sumin watched him. A small smile touched her eyes. "Good. You learn." Vale put the chopsticks down. He looked at her, then at her hands. He thought of the report he had just sent. He thought of Lee Hanul's story. He thought of the delivery drone that had nudged his own machine to safety. You were a champion," he said. "A shooter." Sumin's smile became a little wistful. She nodded. "A long time ago. Now I am a cook. A delivery woman. It is not so different. Both need a steady hand. Both need you to pay attention. Both are about care." She picked up his empty water glass and wiped a spot from the table with her cloth. "The food must be right. It must go to the right place. On time. That is all." She walked back behind the counter. Vale sat in the quiet shop. He ate the rest of his noodles. It was difficult. He dropped food, but he kept trying. The hold and the follow-through. When he was done, he paid. He bowed his head to Choi Soo-min. "Thank you for the meal. And for the lesson." She bowed back. "Come again. Practice makes better." He walked out into the evening air. The city lights were starting to come on. He looked at the thousands of windows, the streets full of people going home. He no longer saw a chaotic, primitive species. He saw a living system, a network of quiet skills and practiced hands. He understood now. The true defense of Earth was not in its armies. It was in the unassuming, steady hands of its people. In the grandmother who knew that food must be delivered on time. In the student who sought the perfect shot. In the barista who understood patterns. In the teacher who remembered. They were not soldiers. They were something more fluid and more resilient. They were civilians, and they did not miss. The reply from the Kelios High Command came 1 week later. Commander Vale read it in his office. It was brief. It acknowledged his report. It agreed with his new assessment. The orders for the Seoul garrison were changed. There would be no more demonstrations of force, no more tests. Instead, the focus would be on strict cultural observation and adherence to local procedural laws. The garrison would become quieter, smaller, and more polite. It was a strategic retreat based on a new understanding. Vale did not feel victory. He felt relief and a deep sense of caution. He had looked into the water and seen the hidden depths. He had no desire to dive in. Life in the city returned to its normal rhythm. The news moved on to other stories. The drone show was remembered as a funny failure of alien technology. People went back to their lives. Kim Yuna kept practicing her archery. Her focus was now on an upcoming national tournament. The incident at the gate was just a strange memory. She still thought about the angle of the falling crate sometimes. It helped her understand wind and movement. She filed the knowledge away, a useful piece of data. Park Jun went back to his job at the coffee shop. He still played Star Marshal at night. His ranking in the top 0.1% was secure. Sometimes, when a Kelios soldier came in for coffee, which they sometimes did now, Jun would watch their movements. He noted their stiffness, their predictable patterns. He did nothing with this information. It was just an observation, a habit of his mind. Choi Soo-min ran her noodle shop. Her delivery drone buzzed through its appointed routes. She sometimes saw the tall, gray aliens walking in the market. They were customers like any others. Strange but harmless if they were polite. She had taught one how to use chopsticks. She wondered if he practiced. Lee Hanul stood in his classroom. It was a new semester. He was teaching the same lesson about the Korean War. He held the old, deactivated rifle again. He explained how sometimes the terrain and the patience of a single soldier could outweigh advanced technology. The students listened. They knew he had been a soldier. They did not know the rest. They did not need to know. After class, he walked to the park. He sat on a bench and watched the city. He felt the old weight in his chest, the memory of Minsu. It was always there. But today it felt a little different. It felt less like a useless burden and more like a stone that had been used to build a wall. A wall not to keep people out, but to make them think before they entered that he saw a familiar figure walking toward him. It was Commander Vale. He was alone. He wore simple clothes. He sat on the far end of the bench without asking. For a while, neither man spoke. They just watched the pigeons and the people. "Your report was accepted," Vale said finally. "The garrison's mandate has changed. We are observers now, not overseers." Hanul nodded slowly. "Observation is a good first step to understanding." "I have been observing," Vale said. He sounded tired. "I see the archery ranges. I see the game cafes. I see the old men playing strategy games. I see the delivery drones. I understand your point. The precision is in the culture. It is baked in. It is not for war," Hanul said. "It is for life. But life sometimes requires defense." "Yes." Vale was silent for another minute. "The ceramic bearing. From the gate. Was it you?" Hanul looked at the alien. His face was peaceful. "Does it matter?" "It was a shot that needed to be taken. It was taken. It was taken with a tool that was not a weapon," Vale said. "That is what matters. That is what my report said. Humanity does not turn tools into weapons. You treat weapons as if they are just other tools. It is a dangerous philosophy."
"No," Aneul corrected gently.
"It is a responsible one. It means we remember that every tool has weight. Every action has consequence. Even a spoon can be a weapon if you are hungry enough. But a weapon is always a weapon. We choose to see the tool first. It makes us more careful." Vale absorbed this. It was another layer to the puzzle. He stood up to leave. He looked down at the human teacher, this quiet man who was a signpost to a terrifying truth. "I will not ask you again who your sniper is, Lee Hanul," Vale said. "Good," Hanul replied, "because the answer will not change. Any civilian will do." He gave a small, not unfriendly smile. "But let us hope they are never needed." Vale gave a stiff nod, a Kilios gesture of respect. He walked away, disappearing into the flow of people on the path. Hanul stayed on the bench until the sun began to set. The city lights winked on one by one. In 1,000 apartments, people were cooking dinner. In basements, games were being played. On quiet ranges, arrows were being loosed at distant targets. In a small shop, an old champion was wiping down counters, her hands steady and sure that IT was not a perfect piece. It was an alert one. It was a piece maintained not by a threat, but by a simple, proven fact, known now to at least one alien commander. The facts were these. The skill was widespread. The patience was deep. The hands were steady, and they did not miss.